Abby scrutinized her reflection in the dressing room mirror. Under the harsh spotlight, her face appeared tired and drawn, with dark circles under her eyes. The visible wrinkles served as an unwelcome reminder of her age. This Saturday, Abby would turn 47. For her, age was a sensitive subject. She had managed to maintain her attractiveness, investing in expensive cosmetics, and regularly visiting a beautician and gym. Yet these efforts merely masked the surface. Deep down, Abby felt that old age was lurking around the corner, ready to snatch away her most prized possessions, beauty and happiness. The upcoming celebration filled her with dread. Until 40, she hadn't noticed significant changes, but as she approached 50, time's relentless march became increasingly apparent. "Carl will probably say it's too tight," Abby mused, imagining her husband's reaction to her outfit. "But who cares? I feel it. I feel attractive in this dress." Her husband was 4 years her junior, and they had been married for 20 years, weathering various challenges along the way. By societal standards, their family life was prosperous. The couple lived comfortably, rarely argued, and had raised a wonderful son. Though their passion had waned over time, Abby took solace in her fidelity to Carl, who had never shown interest in other women. Once, Abby had been madly in love with Carl. Her parents had discouraged her from marrying a young college graduate, but she wouldn't listen. Passion consumed her, eclipsing all other suitors her father deemed promising. Her mother kept insisting that Carl was only after their money. "Who is he?" she'd ask. "A small-town boy living in a dorm on a meagre scholarship. And you, a beautiful girl from a good family, with your own apartment and a prestigious job at 26. But Abby disregarded others' opinions. She was head over heels for the smiling, modest man who wrote her poems, met her after work daily, and presented her with humble bouquets bought on his paltry scholarship. Then unexpectedly, she became pregnant. She adamantly refused to terminate it, and at a family meeting, her parents decided a wedding must be arranged. Their prejudice against Carl suddenly vanished, replaced by concern for the family's reputation. The wedding was lavish. Abby's parents spared no expense to ensure their daughter wanted for nothing. Carl initially resisted, advocating for a simple ceremony and even taking a night job to pay for the rings. But Abby and her parents were resolute. "We're marrying off our only daughter," Abby's father declared. "The ceremony must reflect that." Carl did insist on buying the rings himself, displaying a principled nature that eventually won his future father-in-law. When Lucas was born, Abby discovered true happiness. Her son became her world. She extended her maternity leave, wanting to spend as much time as possible with her child. As Lucas grew, Abby returned to work. She and Carl started their own company, initially focusing on children's goods. Abby believed this would allow her to continue business with pleasure, testing products on her son: clothes, toys, furniture, and school supplies. Gradually, their enterprise expanded. As their son grew, so did their product range. Abby had an intuition for popular items, while Carl revealed a talent for leadership. He personally conducted interviews, hiring promising staff. He handled important negotiations himself, impressing contractors with his business acumen. Within a few years, they had transformed their small family business into a thriving enterprise, opening several children's goods stores. However, when their son turned 14, Abby sensed something amiss. Their marriage had lost its harmony. Carl no longer seemed to see her as a woman. Rare intimate moments temporarily distracted her from their emotional issues, but she increasingly suspected Carl of infidelity. She tried repeatedly to catch him, but either he concealed it well, or there was nothing to find. Thus, her suspicions remained unconfirmed. Eventually, Abby abandoned her attempts to expose her allegedly unfaithful spouse. Yet life didn't improve. Each day, she felt her former allure slipping away. Entering her 5th decade, Abby began actively focusing on self-care. She joined a gym, found an excellent beautician, and regularly updated her wardrobe. At parent-teacher conferences, she often caught admiring glances from her son's classmates' fathers. But even this couldn't bolster her self-esteem, so thoroughly eroded by her beloved husband's indifference. Abby's life revolved around home and work. Previously, she had found fulfillment in raising Lucas, but as her son grew up, he needed less maternal attention, and when Lucas left for university in another city, Abby felt truly alone. Carl stayed long hours at work. He opened a new branch, which he decided to develop on his own, without letting his wife into it, who had enough to do. On the eve of her 47th birthday, Abby realized her life had become unbearably dull and monotonous, yet she felt powerless to change it. Having decided to buy a dress, Abby went shopping for shoes. She hadn't worn stilettos in a long time and felt compelled to add them to her outfit. She chose a slender pair of high-heeled pumps that looked spectacular on her legs. 47, Abby sighed to herself. I never imagined old age would creep up so imperceptibly. Soon I'll be buying orthopedic shoes instead of stilettos. Grinning grimly, she headed for her car. At home, sorting her purchases, the woman realized she'd forgotten to buy coffee, a drink she couldn't imagine living without. I'll have to go out again, Abby thought. Better now, or I'll hear Carl's complaints in the morning. I'll sort out my purchases later. Like her husband couldn't start his day without a cup of aromatic coffee prepared by his wife. This tradition remained one of the few that brought the couple together, if only briefly. Abby decided to walk, as there was a small tea and coffee shop not far from their house. She liked this store. They always welcomed her as an old acquaintance, advised her on new products, and treated her to chocolate. When she entered the store, she didn't see the familiar Helen behind the counter. This elegant woman had been working there since its opening at least 8 years. Today, instead of the elderly lady with her immaculate coiffure, an unfamiliar man stood near the cash register. What a handsome man, Abby noted to herself, admiring the seller's military bearing, which was accentuated by his light grey 3-piece suit. He should be on a catwalk, not behind a counter. The man smiled pleasantly at her as she entered. Good evening. His voice matched his appearance, deep and velvety. What can I do for you? Hello, Abby replied, momentarily distracted by the stranger. I need coffee. Usually Helen assists me. Is it her day off? Helen's sick, the salesman replied with genuine regret. It's just a seasonal cold. You know how changeable the weather is. I'm filling in for her. My name is Darren. Abby. She introduced herself simply. Nice to meet you. Likewise, Mum. How may I help you? I need coffee, Abby began again. I usually take Arabica. Helen always recommends what she drinks herself and never misses the mark. Darren rubbed his chin. I might know just the thing to surprise you. We received new varieties from Yemen this morning. Do you drink Arabic coffee? I do, Abby answered uncertainly, disarmed by the man's smile. Dark roast. It has to be dark because my husband won't drink anything else. You're married? Darren's question seemed oddly surprising. Why should it be unusual that she, Abby, was married? Yes, she replied. And you make your own coffee? The salesman smiled. Of course, I'm a fan, as they say. I can't go without coffee. And it's not just to wake up. It's become a ritual for me, a family tradition. My husband Carl drinks it just to wake up, but for me, it's important to savour the moment. You understand? Absolutely, Darren nodded. For me, coffee isn't just a morning drink either. Abby took another look at her interlocutor. About my age, a couple of years older. The suit is expensive, though simple. You can't buy such a suit on a consultant's salary. His appearance is well groomed, manicure impeccable. And that watch. Abby, Darren interrupted her musing, I think I found what you need. Dark roast with a very pronounced aroma and flavour, and a nutty note. What do you think? Helen would sell her soul for this. We only received 2 packs. It's quite rare and expensive, but I'll give you a good discount. Let's do it. Abby answered hesitantly, feeling oddly insecure in this man's company. I sense your uncertainty. Darren smiled. How about we try it? Let me brew you an espresso. Abby was often treated to coffee here. It was quite normal for a store of this calibre to arrange a tasting for a client, but for some reason the offer unsettled her. Thank you very much for the offer, she began apologetically, but unfortunately I don't have time. My husband should be back soon, and I don't want to be late. The boss is the boss, Darren replied nonchalantly, although I don't think 5 minutes will make much difference. You could always say you got stuck in traffic. For some reason, Abby desperately wanted to accept the offer. She couldn't understand why she saw some hidden implication in this quite ordinary tasting procedure. Perhaps it was because she found the man attractive. She'd never had much interest in other men since getting married, but now old memories stirred in her soul, recollections of the admirers who had pursued her before her marriage. Okay, Abby agreed. Let's have your espresso. Excellent, the man smiled again. Double with sugar? Double, Abby confirmed, but no sugar. Darren nodded. He invited Abby to the back of the hall, where the tasting area was located. A huge chrome coffee machine gleamed. The woman sat in a comfortable chair as the salesman began to prepare coffee. When he ground the beans, a magical aroma enveloped the space, with unfamiliar oriental notes clearly detectable. What a smell! Delicious, said Abby, inhaling deeply. Yes, it's a good flavour. Once you try it, you'll want to buy our entire stock. I should warn you, there are only 2 packs for sale. This is the 3rd, but it's just for personal enjoyment. You're welcome to come by, and I'll make you some coffee. Abby blushed, sensing the man was openly flirting with her. There was nothing unusual in his offer, but she felt there was something behind his words. Oh, come on. She tried to shake off those thoughts. It's just politeness, his job to attract clients. That's what he's trying to do, and I'm an idiot thinking about romance. I'm 50 years old and I'm still acting like a girl. Everything's ready, Darren interrupted her inner dialogue. Please. He placed a tiny cup of aromatic espresso on the table before Abby. The drink was black, thick, and smelled wonderful. Abby brought the cup to her lips and took a sip. God, she exclaimed, this is fantastic. Just the way I like it, and it even tastes like walnuts. That's right, Darren nodded. So our taste sensations are the same. I thought I smelled walnuts too. And notice the texture, oily and thick, although I used a standard portion. Delicious, Abby said gratefully, setting the empty cup on the table and dabbing her lips with a napkin. You were right. I'll take all you've got. I can only sell you 1 pack. What do you mean? Abby asked, puzzled. You said there were 2. I wouldn't want to miss out on such a wonderful option. I'll sell you 1, the man spoke ingratiatingly, and when it runs out, you'll come for the 2nd one, which will be waiting just for you. Otherwise you'll be gone for a long time, and I wouldn't mind seeing you again. Abby felt herself blushing again. This time Darren flirted openly. Of course she was flattered by such attention, but the image of Carl immediately sprang to mind. All right, the woman agreed after a moment's thought. She herself wanted to see this man again. There was something irresistibly attractive in his manners. Do you work here now? I just haven't seen you before. I've always worked here, the man laughed. I just don't usually stand behind the counter. Really? Okay, I'll be sure to stop by soon. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go. I can't keep you any longer, Darren sighed. If I'm not in the hall when you make your next visit, Ask Helen or whoever's behind the counter to call me, okay? I will, Abby smiled. See you soon. All the best. I'll be waiting. On the way home, Abby was lost in thought. The man wouldn't leave her mind. She wanted to return to the cosy store and continue their conversation. Alas, it seemed improbable. When Abby entered the apartment, the smell of cigarette smoke hit her nose. Apparently Carl was home, though he rarely showed up at this hour. Entering the kitchen, Abby found Carl in a foul mood. "Well, where have you been?" he grumbled unhappily. "Packages are lying around. You haven't even sorted them out." "Carl," Abby began defensively. She disliked her husband's tone. He seldom picked on her, much less reproached her with anything. His usual state was complete indifference. "I went to get coffee when I realized we'd run out of it." "For coffee? There's a store 2 steps away. Are you telling me you spent an hour picking it out? Or even longer? I've been here for an hour already." "What are you talking about?" Abby hadn't realized her excursion had been so long. "Apparently I was chatting with Helen. She was telling me about a new variety. Here, take a look." Carl pushed the outstretched packet away. Abby was surprised by his reaction, but even more surprised that she hadn't told the truth, instead mentioning her chat with Helen. "Drink it yourself," he said gruffly. "And how often do you go out like that in the evenings? As soon as your husband's not home, you're outdoor as soon as possible." "Carl, what are you talking about? Have I ever given you any reason to think that? You know I don't go anywhere but work." "I know you left the office 2 hours early today," the husband said, squinting. "I went to buy a dress," Abby replied in a conciliatory tone. "There was nothing to do, so I decided to seize the moment. Dear, are you suspecting me of something? If so, tell me straight. We're not children anymore. Have I ever, once in 20 years, given you a reason to doubt my fidelity?" "It happens, Abby. People live together for years and then divorce as if nothing had happened." "Divorce?" Abby tried to understand what her husband was getting at. "I don't understand. Are you talking about getting a divorce?" "No, of course not, Abby." Her husband suddenly softened his tone. "I was just tired, angry that you weren't home. I came home early, as they say. Never mind, I'm sorry. Come on, show me your dress." "No way," Abby smiled. "I want it to be a surprise. I can only show you the package, so you don't jump to conclusions." Carl disliked the sarcasm in his wife's tone, but decided to keep silent. Suddenly his phone rang. Hurriedly picking up the device from the table, Carl declined the call and for some reason placed the smartphone face down. "Abby, don't take offence," he began. "I have to go out again. You see, they're calling. They won't leave me alone." "All right," Abby shrugged. "Don't be late. I'm going to cook dinner now." "I'll try to get it done in a couple of hours. Well, don't miss me too much." The celebration was a success. To mark his wife's birthday, Carl had rented the luxurious restaurant. There were so many guests that Abby felt she barely had time to greet everyone. The woman was showered with flowers and compliments. One thing saddened her, though. There were no truly close friends present. Most of the invitees were colleagues. Abby had long ago grown accustomed to having no girlfriends. Carl had somehow inadvertently distanced her from all the women with whom she had once socialized. Of course, she still had some friends, but it felt inappropriate to share her worries with them, and Abby had plenty to worry about. As expected, Carl criticized her outfit. He reproached his wife for choosing a dress he deemed inappropriate for her age. He was used to seeing Abby either in the strict suits she wore to work or in comfortable home clothes. She rarely wore dresses, favouring more practical outfits. Just before leaving for the restaurant, when Abby emerged from the bedroom, showing her husband a magnificent dark green evening gown, Carl started an argument. "Carl," Abby tried to appease her husband, "I don't understand why you're picking at everything these days. What's wrong with wearing a beautiful dress? It's all for your pleasure. I only go to the gym for you. Shouldn't your husband be flattered to have an attractive wife? Or am I wrong?" "I'm not every man," Carl retorted. "You've dressed so provocatively. You know very well that almost all the guests will be men." "Well, let them look, and be jealous that you have such a beautiful wife." Abby tried to smile. "You're too old for such outfits," her husband replied rudely. Abby felt her cheeks flush. Tears even welled up in her eyes. It was the first time Carl had spoken so bluntly about her age. Trying to maintain her composure, Abby went into the hallway and began to put on her shoes. "Carl, let's go. The guests are waiting." "Abby, are you offended? I'm telling the truth, and the truth shouldn't hurt. We should have gone dress shopping together." "Carl, please stop. You could be a little more tactful. Let's not spoil the mood before the celebration." After another glass of champagne, Abby felt sufficiently relaxed. She tried not to dwell on her husband's words, especially since he attempted to make amends by giving her a present. The gift was a luxurious necklace with emeralds. As Carl had said, it was very fitting, accentuating Abby's eyes. Anyone would have been delighted with such a gift, but Abby felt gloomy. She had nowhere to wear such a piece of jewellery, nor any of the gifts her husband had given her earlier. The only jewellery Abby wore regularly was her wedding ring and the elegant earrings her husband had given her on their wedding day. All the other jewellery she had accumulated over the years was stored in a bank safe, awaiting better times. "Don't look a gift horse in the mouth," goes the popular saying, but Abby would have been much more pleased with a practical gift. Most of all, she dreamed of going to the seaside with her husband. The last time they had visited a resort was about 5 years ago. Abby had repeatedly hinted to Carl that it would be nice to recreate their holiday romance, but her husband remained deaf to her requests, or pretended not to understand. When the couple returned home, Carl immediately went to bed. The man had drunk a lot, so Abby didn't even expect attention from him. She changed her clothes and made herself strong coffee, but without taking a sip, fell asleep on the kitchen sofa. The doorbell woke Abby up. For a long time, she couldn't figure out where she was. Gradually, the woman came to her senses. The doorbell continued to ring insistently. Her head was splitting. The aftermath of drinking champagne the night before. Abby looked at the clock. 11:34. "Jesus!" the woman exclaimed, surprised. "Did I oversleep?" Obviously, her husband was not at home. Carl must have left early without waking his wife, who was sleeping peacefully in the living room. It was her day off. Abby wasn't planning to go anywhere today, but Carl had a meeting with some partner. She remembered that, too. The bell kept ringing. "Who's so persistent?" Abby said aloud, heading for the door. "Who is it?" "I'm here to see Carl," came a ringing girl's voice from behind the door. "He's not home," Abby said warily. "He's at work. Please call him." The woman was about to move away from the door, but the caller wasn't about to give up. "Wait a minute," the girl stammered. "Are you Abby?" "Yes," the woman replied, confused. "Well then, I'm here to see you. Open up, please. We need to talk." Abby hesitated. What does this girl want? How does she know Carl and me? Curiosity got the better of her, and Abby unlocked the door. On the threshold stood a young woman in her late 20s. Her brightly painted, pretty face bore a smug smile that gave her a predatory look. "Who are you, and what do you want?" Abby inquired. Her guest gave her a displeased look and smirked. "I think we should continue this conversation off the doorstep. I have a lot to say." "All right," the hostess replied, embarrassed. "Come into the living room." She escorted the stranger into the room and sat her down in a chair. Abby wanted to offer her something, as the norms of hospitality demanded, but for some reason hesitated. "May I just call you Abby?" the girl said in an insolent tone. Abby was outraged by the girl's behaviour. She was sprawled in the chair with one foot on her leg, twirling a strand of hair around her finger defiantly. "My name is Wendy," continued the guest. "I am Carl's favourite woman." Silence reigned in the room. Abby digested what she had heard. To say that Wendy's statement surprised her would be wrong. She had long ago guessed that Carl had taken a mistress. Constant delays at work, sudden mood swings, and some details noticeable only to her. Now her hunch was confirmed, but Abby couldn't call it a blow. For some reason she didn't care, whether Carl had taken a mistress or not. The feelings between them had long since faded. Abby was more outraged that this insolent girl had come here, to their apartment, smirking as if she had won a victory. Really? Abby feigned surprise. And how, I wonder, did you realize that you're his favourite woman? What's there to realize? Wendy replied, surprised. Carl and I have been together for a long time. Oh, yes, you didn't know anything. Why did you come? Abby asked tiredly, interrupting the conversation. What do you mean, why? Carl wants a divorce. He prepared the documents long ago, but he's so indecisive. You know that yourself. So, I thought that by telling you, I would accelerate the process. Girl, do you really think my husband is serious? Abby grinned. Well, he took a mistress. Is that a reason to divorce? He'll have his fun with you in return. We've been together for 20 years. We have a son. You shouldn't think that he is ready to give up his family life just like that. Family? Wendy laughed. What kind of life is that? Have you seen yourself? Old, boring. What can you give him? Yes, he himself said that he stays with his wife only out of pity. He doesn't want to spend extra time at home. He's coming to my place right after work, and I always make sure he doesn't get bored. I don't doubt it at all. Abby marvelled at her own calmness. At another time, she would have scratched that girl's face and kicked her out. But now she even wondered how this dialogue would end. And you're wrong to think that we're not serious, Wendy continued. By the way, Carl even bought me an apartment. Doesn't that say something about his intentions? A man would hardly make such a gift to a woman he doesn't care about. Abby was silent for a long time, looking at Wendy. Such a grand gesture on the part of her husband seemed indecent. Wendy was right. Carl would hardly splurge for a one-night stand. Yes, he liked to impress, but he would have likely limited himself to expensive yet non-binding jewellery. An apartment was more serious. Such an expensive present hinted at certain intentions. It was strange that such a large sum had escaped her attention. Abby wasn't particularly interested in finances, trusting their management to her husband, apparently for nothing. Well, she said, sighing, I don't know what you want. If you need our divorce, let's wait for Carl and discuss everything. If you think I'm going to hold him back, you're wrong. If you think I'm just going to let him go, you're wrong. It's obvious you want money from my husband. Don't try to convince me of a great eternal love. He's twice your age. I can understand him. He bought a beautiful creature, ready to listen to his any lie and to fulfill his any whims. But I understand you much better. A successful businessman, obviously rich, and you can spin it any way you want. How can you not take a chance? And the wife? What wife? A tired old woman. She'll move on, make way for the young. Right? Wendy, I can see right through you. Even the fact that you're bragging about the apartment says a lot. I wonder if Carl realizes that you're motivated solely by mercenary motives. You are wrong, Wendy replied hotly. You can say what you want, but we really love each other. You've just forgotten what real feeling and passion are. You've gone to work, devoted yourself not to your husband, but to your career, not even realizing that he has his own needs and desires, and I can give him all that. You bet, Abby replied gloatingly. You probably don't work anywhere either, ready to sit on a gullible man's neck, just to be provided for. You're wrong again. I am working. I've been Carl's personal assistant for a month now. What's more, he's creating a new branch entirely for me, appointing me as director. That's just ridiculous, Abby smiled. How old are you?" 23, the young woman proudly declared. "Here's the thing, Wendy. If you think that a pretty face is enough to manage a branch, you're very wrong. I've been in this business for over 15 years, and even that's not enough to avoid mistakes. If you're telling the truth, I can only sympathize with Carl, who's putting so much effort into this business." "And what makes you think I don't have a brain? I've got a good education, and I've got business acumen. I have experience, but it's not like it was 15 years ago. It's enough to know how to use the internet and talk to people." "Wow," Abby sneered. "Smart, beautiful, and not after money. You're a real treasure. Listen, honey, if what you're trying to convince me of is true, which I strongly doubt, would you kindly spare me from your company? I'll talk to my husband tonight, but don't come here again. I want to hear about the divorce from him, not from a stranger wearing rose-coloured glasses." Wendy stood up and snorted unhappily. It was clear she had expected a different reaction. Scandals, tantrums, not this cool welcome. "All the best, Abby. I advise you to visit the salon if you intend to try keeping Carl. Attempting to persuade your husband not to go to his mistress should be done in better shape. You know, Wendy," Abby suddenly added, "thank you for your advice, but I'll manage on my own. As for your grand passion, before counting on material support from my husband, at least ask where he got his money. I didn't want to tell you because you have love, and it shouldn't matter. But after the divorce, Carl will get absolutely nothing." Already crossing the threshold, the girl stopped abruptly. She hadn't expected such information, and now thought Abby was mocking her, trying to get rid of a rival. "What do you mean?" she asked, perplexed. "What difference does it make?" Abby replied ironically. "You're not interested in money, so why be curious about it?" "Carl," Abby pulled him out of his thoughts again. "Look, you know I'm a non-confrontational person, and I'm always ready to compromise. We both know that there's nothing more between us. I accept it, and living with you under one roof will be torment. I guess our marriage has come to an end. I want you to be happy." "Abby, I don't want a divorce. Tomorrow I'll break it off with Wendy, I promise. I don't need her. It was some kind of insanity. Forgive me." "Tomorrow," his wife grinned. "And why, I wonder, not today? Carl, don't torture me. I realize, even if not Wendy, there will be another. And after her, a third and fourth. It's like gambling, you can't stop. And I don't want to suspect or accuse you. If you want to be free, go ahead. I won't interfere." "You say that?" Carl suddenly changed tactics. "How easily you've agreed to all this. It feels like you've been waiting for an excuse to get a divorce. And here's how lucky this fool came to pay a visit. I think you have someone yourself." "Don't talk nonsense," his wife cut him short. "How can you suspect me of anything at all? You know perfectly well how I live, and unlike you, I don't neglect the house. I haven't even thought about other men in 20 years, and you dare to make assumptions like that. I think the whole point is that you're unwittingly putting the blame on me. When was the last time you gave me flowers for no reason?" "You don't like flowers." "That's not the point. Flowers are a sign of attention. It's always nice to get a bouquet, whether you like it or not. Tell me, why did you give me that necklace yesterday? Just to keep it in the safe? You knew perfectly well that I wanted to go on vacation. Not alone, but with you. But I don't care now. Carl, we are getting a divorce." "Abby!" He tried to calm her down. "What? Divorce? Well, I strayed, but it's not the end of the world, is it? Almost all men cheat. I'm not trying to justify myself, but did you really think I'd leave you for that girl? Go to hell!" Abby screamed. "You refuse to hear me. Do you think I'll just forget and start over? No way. I've made my point. Why continue something that has no purpose? We have a good son, our business is thriving, but without mutual trust, I can't continue with you. And you lied to me. If you had confessed immediately, we could have had a dialogue. You know I value honesty above all else. When the person closest to you lies, it's a stab in the back. I can't trust you anymore. We'll continue doing business as before. The job means a lot to both of us. The apartment? Keep it. I'll move to my parents' place. It's empty anyway. See? I'm not claiming anything. Live as you like. Listen to me, Carl pleaded, not giving up hope. What do the apartment and business have to do with this? I don't want to lose you. Really? Abby asked, surprised. Then why do you seek solace in another woman's arms? No. Honey, I'm sorry, but I've made up my mind. I can't live with you any more. Abby, calm down. I'm already cold. The wife laughed bitterly. And so are you. With these words, she stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door. Carl tried to talk for a while longer, but Abby remained deaf to his pleas. She moved into her parents' apartment, taking only the necessities, and the very next day, after consulting with her lawyer, she filed for divorce. The couple were given 2 months to reconcile, but Abby knew it wouldn't happen, no matter what tricks Carl tried. I'd love to go to the sea right now, the woman sighed to herself. Maybe I should go alone, have a holiday fling, escape my thoughts, just relax. The idea seemed good, so Abby went to the nearest travel agency to book a trip. At the travel agency, a pleasant, middle-aged woman with an impeccable smile greeted her. Are you sure you don't want to go abroad? The agent inquired. It's the perfect time to fly to Thailand or Bali. The rainy season has just ended, and the weather is gorgeous. No, Abby smiled. For some reason, I want to go to our coast. It's a sentimental whim. Nostalgia, I suppose. Abby often recalled how she and her husband had travelled spontaneously to the nearest coast in their youth. He always found secluded beaches where they could behave without inhibition. Before Lucas was born, the couple travelled frequently, and even after the baby arrived, they regularly ventured abroad, shifting from tropical seas to the hospitable and comfortable Europe. I can recommend some wonderful hotels. There's one guest house in kind of glamping style. It's very cosy, but top-notch in every way. It's not in town, but in the village. There's less hustle and bustle. My husband and I stayed there last year. We had the best experience. They have a private beach. Few guests. You definitely won't regret it. Yes, that sounds interesting, Abby agreed. Let's take a look. Together, the women examined pictures of the rooms and the hotel grounds. Abby liked the style of the property and guest houses, the abundance of blooming greenery, and the private beach. Okay, Abby conceded. I'll trust you. You won't regret it. Abby booked a tour for early September. At first, she wanted to rent a house for a week, but after some consideration, she decided on 2. The office was unlikely to fall apart without her during that time. With just a few days before her departure, the woman decided to go shopping to distract herself from sad thoughts and buy things for the upcoming trip at the mall. She flitted through the boutiques, impulsively grabbing everything that caught her eye. A travel bag, swimsuits, pareos, beach slippers, a silk robe, several dresses, outfits for walking, cosmetics. Abby couldn't stop herself, seized by an inexplicable euphoria. She felt as if this trip would open the door to a new life. Having filled the trunk with her purchases, Abby sat behind the wheel and at last was able to exhale. The phone rang. The woman startled with surprise. Her son's number appeared on the screen. "Kitten, hi," she answered cheerfully. "Mum, stop calling me that," Lucas replied indignantly. "I'm not little anymore." "To me, you'll always be little." "Oh, parents," the son sighed. "Mum, are you doing okay? Has Dad called?" "Honey, I don't feel like talking to him. You know that. He hurt me deeply, but I don't hold a grudge. I'm just ignoring him so I don't give in to his entreaties. "Are you sure you want a divorce? Things happen in life. You can always find a way to work things out. No one says you have to forgive him right away, but—" "Lucas, it's all nonsense. I can't bring myself to look him in the eye. I don't know, maybe it will pass. It's not for nothing that they give us 2 months to reconcile, right?" "Mum, I'm always on your side. You know that." Abby knew it very well. From the day he was born, she and the boy had had a special relationship. The child was like an extension of his mother, following him everywhere. Abby taught him to draw and cook. Even the boy's future speciality was based on his mother's favourite hobby, cooking. He enrolled as a chef, and one of the restaurants was ready to accept the talented student in its kitchen. "Lucas," Abby continued, "I'm going on vacation to the sea." "To the sea?" Lucas drawled. "With whom? Where to?" "I'm going alone, my dear," laughed the mother. "I'm leaving in a couple of days. Not abroad, to our place on the coast. I've wanted to go there for a long time." "Mother, you're crazy. It'll be boring alone. I'd love to keep you company, but my classes start next week." "No, Lucas. I need to be alone. I feel like it would help me get my head straight and my thoughts in order. I'm only going away for 2 weeks. It's a nice family-run hotel. It's got its own beach. It'll be nice. I'll be in touch. I'll send you pictures." Saying goodbye to her son, Abby drove out of the mall parking lot. Suddenly she realised she was craving coffee. Stopping at the nearest cafe for her favourite double espresso, she suddenly remembered there was no coffee at her parents' apartment, where she had been staying for several days. She hadn't even noticed, tormented by the thoughts of her unfaithful husband and the fear of being alone forever. Abby then recalled that Darren, who had last sold her a wonderful Yemeni coffee, had set aside another pack for her. She immediately headed to the shop, suddenly overcome with an unbearable desire to see the man who had treated her with such care and introduced her to that delightful brew. Entering the store, Abby saw Helen behind the counter. "Good afternoon, Abby. I'm glad to see you. It's been a while since you came in, hasn't it?" "Hello," Abby replied. "No, I've been here recently. You've been ill, haven't you?" "Oh, yes, you know. It was so hot. I caught a cold under the air conditioner and had to take sick leave. Darren was working here for me. It was so inconvenient." "Well, who's immune to illness?" "Darren recommended a very tasty coffee to me. I decided to buy another pack. He said he'd set it aside especially for me. Yemeni mocha. Is it waiting for me?" "Let's see," the saleswoman said, looking concerned. "Is he himself here? He asked me to call him next time I stopped by." "Oh," said the saleswoman, flustered. "Darren is away. Do you have important business with him?" "No," Abby smiled. "It was just nice talking to him last time. So I thought—" Abby felt a little disappointed that she wouldn't see that charming man. For some reason, she felt a kind of trepidation thinking about him. "He rarely comes here," said Helen, bringing out a bag of Yemeni Arabica from under the counter. "Here, I think I've found it. Is this the one?" "Yes, that's it," Abby exclaimed, immediately recognizing the distinctive packaging. "Have you tried it yourself?" "Of course," the woman nodded. "Excellent coffee. It's a pity they didn't bring enough, but I think Darren will order more. By the way, there was a note with the packet," Helen said with a knowing look, and handed Abby a neatly folded piece of paper. "This exquisite coffee is a gift for the most beautiful woman. Abby, please accept this humble offering from me. It would be my pleasure. Darren." Abby shifted her gaze from the message to Helen. "I can't accept such a gift." "What do you mean?" laughed the woman. "In my opinion, it's obvious. You shouldn't refuse. Darren apparently had good reason to think it would please you." "It's somehow uncomfortable," Abby hesitated. "From a man I barely know." "What's uncomfortable about it? He clearly likes you. I'll tell you a secret. After his wife's death, he threw himself into work, and he was so handsome. Women chased him in droves, but he remained unyielding. So I'll tell you, if he's paying this kind of attention, it means he's got something in his heart. For him, coffee isn't just a commodity, but a true passion. His wife is dead, you say? Abby said thoughtfully. Yes, Helen sighed. Claire used to run everything here. She worked behind the counter herself. Such a good woman. Not arrogant, down to earth, always with a smile. And then she was diagnosed with brain cancer. It took the poor girl in just 6 months. Darren was beside himself. After the funeral, he disappeared for months. He didn't even take his son with him, leaving him with a nanny. His brother took care of things. Thank God he came back later, having come to his senses. I thought we'd have to say goodbye to the store. So Darren is your director? Abby was surprised. Didn't he say so? Helen laughed. Again, he pretended to be a salesman. Well, that's how he likes it, keeping things simple. Yes, the whole chain of shops is his. He doesn't mind standing behind the counter sometimes. He and Claire, when they started the business, served customers themselves. Just think about it. Wealthy people could have turned up their noses and waited for the money to trickle into their account. But not these two. They were truly doing what they love. You could see it right away. When will he be back? Abby asked unexpectedly. In a week or two. I honestly don't even know where he went. He said he'd just be out of town. Is it any of my business to pry into the details? Why don't I give you his phone number? Helen suddenly suggested. What? No, Abby exclaimed, alarmed. That would be so awkward. And what would I tell him? I'd better come back later. I hope I'll catch him then. I'm going away now, too. I'll be back in a couple of weeks. I think he'll be back by then, too. That's up to you, Helen agreed. Although if I were you, I wouldn't let this opportunity slip. It's obvious he likes you. I know him well. The boss never does anything lightly. Although, as I recall, you're married, so I can understand you. Well, about that, Abby suddenly felt like confiding in Helen. I'm getting a divorce. How can it be? The woman exclaimed in sincere surprise. It's all banal. Cheating, Abby sighed. Can you imagine? 20 years together and then this. He got himself a mistress, and this juvenile girl even came to my house and began to assert her rights. Helen sighed. 20 years is a long time. How could he cheat on such a beautiful and pleasant woman? I've grown old. That's the whole point, Abby said, embarrassed. Nonsense, Helen replied rather sharply. You look beautiful. It's obvious that you take care of yourself. Who told you that? The mistress? She's probably about 20 years old herself. They like to get on your nerves. I'll tell you, woman, after 40, you only get better. Like a fine wine. Thank you, Helen. I'd like to hear such compliments from my husband, too, but I guess he has a different opinion. Come on, if he stopped seeing you as the one, divorce him safely. There's nothing to regret about the years you've lived together. You've got everything ahead of you. Happiness can come at any age. Put all your problems out of your mind. My advice to you, go somewhere to rest. It will be easier. I'm going to the sea, Abby said dreamily. You feel it yourself that it should be done, so good luck. Definitely come back. Will you tell me if it helped you? Of course, Abby laughed. At the airport, Abby took a cab. Despite the sea being several kilometres away, she could smell it. Perhaps it was the power of anticipation, but this barely perceptible odour, impossible to confuse with anything else, stirred a flurry of emotions in her soul. When the car approached a beautiful wrought iron fence covered with grapevines, Abby realised she had chosen the right hotel. Behind the fence stood a luxurious 2-storey mansion with an open attic, and in the back of the property she glimpsed a few more little houses. Apparently, Abby was going to spend the next 2 weeks in one of them. Here, the smell of the sea became much more distinct, Abby even thought she could hear the waves. The woman rang the bell. In a few seconds, the gate was opened by a pleasant young man, introducing himself as Stan. "Let me take your luggage," the young man said, and deftly retrieved Abby's bags from the trunk of the cab. He invited the guest to go to the reception to check in. "Glad to have you as our guest," greeted Abby, a pretty girl who looked a lot like Stan, the one who had met her at the gate. "My name is Kelly. You can ask me or Stan if you have any questions. You've already met my brother. He's taking the luggage to the house. I will escort you there in a few minutes." "You have a gorgeous place," Abby smiled. "I must admit, it was recommended to me, and I was told right away that it's even better in person than in the photos." "Thank you," Kelly replied. "We really appreciate our guests. You see, the company is a family business, so reputation is critical. We now have 3 large guest houses and 2 glamping, but all places are at a distance and allow our guests to enjoy their vacation in privacy." "Are all the houses occupied now?" Abby asked. "Besides you, there are guests in 1 other house. The 3rd is booked, but the vacationers will arrive only in a week, so nothing will interfere with your rest." The girl smiled. Stan returned, ready to escort her to the house. Together, they walked along a narrow path, paved with cobblestones, through which grass poked through. "Well, here we are," Stan proclaimed, showing the guest a pretty cottage with a spacious veranda. "Your cottage is the closest to the beach. Over there, you see the path? A couple of steps, and you're by the sea." It was evident that the young man was very proud of the place. As they walked along, he told her a little about how his parents had built the hotel. Besides their family, there were a few other people working here, a cook, a maid, and a gardener. His brother and sister did most of the work, but it wasn't a burden to them. Abby chatted a little more with Stan while he showed her the house. After that, the young man tactfully left, telling her to call if she needed anything. After closing the door behind him, she changed her clothes and ran to the sea. There were 2 breakwaters jutting into the sea from the shore. It was windy, so the waves were violently beating the concrete barriers, and the boats, moored to the pier, were rising and falling, giving themselves over to the power of the natural elements. Abby kicked off her flip-flops and plunged into the water with childlike glee. The sea was warm, as if it had soaked up all the sun's generous summer offerings. Waves knocked Abby off her feet, but she laughed, floundering in the surf, trying to regain her balance. Realizing her attempts were futile, she surrendered to the elements and swam. "It's been so long since I've swum, and how wonderful that the beach is empty." Having had her fill of swimming, Abby returned to shore and sprawled out on her towel. The sun tenderly dried the droplets on her skin. Despite the approaching sunset, it was still hot. After lounging on the shore for a while, Abby headed back to the house to unpack. The next morning, Abby woke very early, still groggy. A knock at the door revealed a sweetly smiling Kelly on the threshold, with a breakfast on the tray. Abby took the tray and decided to enjoy it on the terrace. Besides the cheese, there was warm bread, a jar of apricot jam, butter, bottles of milk and juice, and a bunch of ripe black grapes. This spread delighted Abby. She prepared a few sandwiches and settled into a wicker chair. Suddenly, a rustling sound caught her attention. Someone was walking down the path toward the beach. "Here come the neighbours," Abby thought with curiosity. "I wonder what kind of people live there." From around the corner of the house, a boy of about 10 bounded out, merrily swinging a towel. "Hi," Abby called out to him. "Hello," the boy smiled back. "I thought we were the only ones vacationing here. Did you arrive recently?" "Yes, last night." The child drew closer, his tanned face beaming with an open, inviting smile. "My name is Mike," he said in a friendly voice, extending his hand to Abby. "I'm Abby," she replied, returning his surprisingly firm handshake. "Are you going for a swim?" "Yeah," the boy replied cheerfully. "The sea here is so cool." Who are you here with? My dad and I are on vacation together. I thought it would be boring, but I actually like that there's no one else here. Aren't you in school? Abby asked, surprised. The school year has just started. I'm homeschooled, Mike said seriously. I'm often ill, so it's more convenient. My dad brought me here because the doctor said sea air would be good for me. It was hard to tell from the child's appearance that he had health problems, but Abby thought it tactless to pry further. Have you had breakfast? I have plenty of goodies here. I had breakfast, thank you, the boy politely declined. Don't you want to go swimming too? You can see jellyfish there, by the way. There are lots of them in the morning, even on the shore. Well, let's go, Abby agreed. I'll just quickly get ready. She swiftly put on her swimsuit, grabbed a large towel and applied sunscreen. When she came out, Mike was waiting patiently for her near the terrace. Sorry it took so long, Abby apologized. Was it long? You should see how Daddy gets ready. I'm already swimming across the sea, and he's just coming out. Abby laughed. She liked the directness with which her new acquaintance spoke, while remaining serious. Somehow she saw Lucas in him. Abby loved children. Once she even broached the subject of a second child with Carl, but her husband didn't support the idea for some reason. Abby shed her robe and waded into the cool sea. Do you want to race? Shouted Mike, who had already swum a couple of dozen meters from the shore. Why not? Abby laughed. She had been a good swimmer in her youth, even practicing professionally. The new friends began their friendly competition. Abby cut through the salty water with strong strokes of her arms. Despite her efforts, the boy was significantly ahead. Whenever she got a little closer, he accelerated sharply and sprinted forward. When they tiredly made it back to shore, both were shivering. Turning their backs to the sun, they sprawled out on lounge chairs, enjoying the cries of seagulls and the sound of waves. It's such a pity there are no seashells here, Abby said suddenly. It's a peculiarity of this beach, Mike said seriously. If there was sand, you could collect them by the bucketful. Do you need shells? I know where you can get some. By the way, let's have a bonfire on the beach tonight. We've done it with Daddy before. We can roast marshmallows. It will be delicious. That would be nice. The woman supported the idea. Are you sure Daddy won't mind? Some lady is clinging to you and wants to keep you company. Are you a lady? Replied the boy cheerfully. As for me, you're cool. You're fun to be with. Do you have kids? Yes, Abby answered proudly. My son's name is Lucas, but he's all grown up now. He dreams of becoming the world's best chef. Wow, cool, Mike admired sincerely. I dream of becoming a marine biologist. Very interesting, Abby said, surprised. Do you like animals? I love life in general, said the boy, with a hint of sadness in his voice. And the sea? It's so fascinating. Do you know how many unexplored species live there? I am eager to discover them all, and I also like dolphins very much. Do you know how many kinds there are? The biggest here are bottlenose dolphins. You can even see them here sometimes, but that's in the evening, closer to sunset. When we went out to sea with my dad on the boat, they swam to the side. They're not afraid. I even managed to pet one. I'd love to swim with dolphins, Abby said dreamily. It's not worth it in the sea, the boy replied seriously. They can play rough and drag you away. At best, you'll get off with bruises. It's better to go to the oceanarium. There's one in town. Do you want me to ask my dad if he'll take us? Oh, there's Daddy, Mike exclaimed joyfully. Abby turned around, squinting against the bright sun. A tall man in a beach robe was approaching them. He waved in greeting. Mike jumped up and ran towards his father. When they approached, Abby's mouth fell open in surprise. Darren stood before her. Oh, what a meeting! The man addressed her joyfully. So, it turns out you're our new neighbour. Good morning, replied Abby, averting her eyes. She felt her cheeks flushing.
"What are you doing here?"
"I decided to take a vacation. I've been working non-stop and feel like I'm running out of energy."
"Are you with your family?"
Darren asked. "No," the woman smiled shyly. "Alone."
"Is that so?"
The man was surprised.
"We need to fix this right away. Mike and I have been here for a week. Honestly, we miss female company."
"Dad, do you two know each other?" the boy asked.
"We do,"
confirmed the father. Abby nodded. "That's great. I was wondering why Abby and I get along so well." Mike was delighted. "Abby, now you absolutely must join us for a bonfire on the beach tonight. Dad, Abby is so cool. We even had a swimming race just now." "And I lost," Abby laughed with feigned resentment. In the evening, the group settled on the beach, planning to roast marshmallow over a fire. Darren, with the practiced movements of an experienced camper, built a fire using driftwood scattered along the shore. The sun had dried the wood thoroughly during the day, evaporating all moisture. The flames quickly engulfed the seasoned wood, sending sparks dancing into the darkening sky. They sat together by the shore, eagerly anticipating their culinary creation. Darren regaled them with amusing anecdotes from his youth, while Mike joyfully ran along the beach, waving sparklers. Abby felt a profound sense of contentment in the company of these relative strangers. It had been a long time since she'd felt so relaxed, and the warmth radiating from this father and son duo was palpable. As the last marshmallow was consumed, Mike began to yawn. Darren escorted him to the house, returning moments later with 2 soft blankets and a bottle of wine.
"That's it. The kid's gone to his tablet. He'll be fast asleep. He's been running around. These are for us. Shall we linger a bit longer?"
Darren gently draped one of the warm blankets over Abby's shoulders. Despite the day's heat, the night had turned notably cooler. Abby wrapped herself snugly and curled up on a chaise longue. Darren settled into the neighbouring one.
"What an idiot!" he exclaimed, slapping his forehead. "I forgot the glasses."
Abby laughed. "We'll be like teenagers then. Drinking straight from the bottle is romantic."
"I'm game if you are," Darren replied.
"Of course," Abby smiled. She was thoroughly enjoying this man's company, and conventional etiquette seemed trivial at the moment. The sky was a tapestry of stars, appearing so close they seemed enormous. Abby had never witnessed such celestial beauty.
"We could use a telescope right about now," Darren mused as if reading her thoughts. "In my younger days I was passionate about astronomy. I'd always lug a telescope on countryside trips. It was terribly heavy, but I'd huff and puff, hauling it in my backpack, terrified of tripping and breaking it. But oh, the joy of stargazing through that thing. I even dabbled in astrophotography. I've still got loads of photos."
"I'd love to see them," Abby said softly.
"Great. I'll show you everything when we're back in town, if you'd like to visit us."
"I'd be delighted," Abby replied, eager to know these wonderful people better. "When do you leave?"
"We're here for 10 more days. Then it's back to the grind, unfortunately."
Abby sighed. "Work. When you're sitting by the sea like this, breathing in the aroma of the fire and savouring this wonderful wine, it feels like the rest of the world exists in some parallel reality that has nothing to do with you. But fairy tales can't last forever, can they?"
"True," Darren nodded. "Although, if you enjoy your work, the contrast isn't so stark. Then again, if it weren't for work, I'd have missed out on many of life's pleasures. Like meeting you, for instance."
Abby blushed, grateful that the darkness and firelight masked her embarrassment. "You know," she said suddenly, "I did stop by the store before I left."
"Ah, so you received my humble gift?"
"I must admit it caught me off guard. I was disappointed when Helen told me you were away. For some reason, I had hoped to see you." After a brief pause, Darren asked,
"Tell me, Abby, do you believe in fate?"
I'm not sure, she replied thoughtfully. I used to be interested in esoteric subjects, but after getting married I somehow let it all go. Life, work, and raising my son took over everything.
I do believe, Darren said, gazing into the fire. Or rather, I started believing when Claire fell ill. I couldn't fathom how a young, vibrant woman with such an open heart could fade away in mere months. But her death became a catalyst for something greater. I travelled to Nepal after the funeral, spent a couple of months there. It opened my eyes to so much, and I met many remarkable people who gave me an invaluable gift, the realization of life's true worth.
May I ask you a personal question? Abby ventured.
Of course.
What's wrong with Mike? He mentioned the doctor sent him here. It's just that he seems perfectly healthy. I wouldn't have guessed anything was wrong.
He has asthma. Many people live with it, but after Claire passed, he began experiencing regular panic attacks, which triggered flare-ups. My son would struggle to breathe, unable to manage the attacks on his own. I put him through so much, dragging him to hospitals, even homeschooling him to minimize stress. The seaside is ideal for addressing both physical and mental health issues. I bring him here often. This hotel belongs to friends of ours, so they always have a room available for us. And tell me, why are you here alone? If I recall correctly, you're married. Did your husband decline to accompany his beautiful wife? Isn't he worried someone might steal you away?
Abby sighed heavily. No, he's not. We're getting divorced.
Oh, Darren said, surprised. How come?
It's everything. He was unfaithful, and I couldn't forgive him. I can't live with someone who betrayed me so easily. Pride stands in the way.
Don't blame yourself, the man reassured her. I wouldn't be able to forgive cheating either. In my opinion, love is a mutual feeling. If it ceases to manifest on one side, the other shouldn't try to keep what's no longer there. Why torture yourself, seeing a man every day who reminds you of his transgression? You're a beautiful woman. You shouldn't miss your chance for a happy future by burying yourself next to someone who treated you meanly.
I feel old. Even Carl's mistress tried to hurt me with it.
Nonsense, Darren objected. You're not old at all. You look fine, and your eyes, look how they shine. Age is a state of mind, not a number in a passport. Don't listen to anyone. Society imposes stereotypes that spoil everything, and people stupidly go along with the majority opinion.
That's very nice to hear. I guess I've rarely been told that. So I've just gone along with society.
Well, that's something we need to fix right away.
10 days in the company of Darren and Mike flew by unnoticed. They spent every day together. Abby realized she had become attached to these people, how close they were to her in spirit. Early in the morning, Mike came to the terrace just as Abby had woken up. Hastily wrapping herself in a robe, she went out to the boy. Abby, let's go for one last swim. We have a plane in 4 hours. Of course, dear. I'll just change now. They raced in the water together. This time, Abby emerged victorious. Is it just me? She looked questioningly at the boy. Or did you let me win today? There you go, he said disappointedly. How did you guess? It's a woman's intuition. Ah, I just thought you always found it frustrating to lose. Not at all, honey, the woman hastened to reassure him. I'm soberly assessing my chances. No worries. I'll go to the pool this year, and next season I'll be in full readiness. Then we'll see who's who. Next season? Mike's eyes lit up. You mean you'll go on vacation with us again? Of course, Abby replied convincingly. How can I deny myself such a pleasure? Abby, the boy began uncertainly, do you really like us? Why do you ask? The woman laughed.
I don't know, Mike shrugged. I'd like you to stay with us. You're cool. You're really fun to be with. Is that so? I have a lot of fun with you and your dad too. That's great. Then you should move in with us. Mike, what are you saying? Abby was embarrassed. Don't you think it's too soon to talk about that? He said so. Abby was taken by surprise by this revelation. Of course, she had become very close to Darren, but the man had limited himself to romantic advances and never directly spoke of his intentions. Abby thought he saw her as a friend, a sister, but not a woman, although she herself felt that this man had taken a place in her heart. But she couldn't ask him directly about such things, for fear of being rejected or misunderstood. Now it appeared that Darren himself didn't dare to offer her something more than mere companionship. When a cab came to take father and son to the airport, Abby went out to see them off. Mike spun around, helping his father stow the suitcases in the trunk. He hugged Abby tightly goodbye, and it even seemed to her that tears appeared in the boy's eyes. "Don't be sad, dear," she told him affectionately. "I'll be here in 4 days. We'll definitely see each other if you want to go out." "Promise?" he asked, wiping his nose with his sleeve. "Of course. I see no reason not to keep my promise." "All right then, bye." The boy gave her another big hug and climbed into the cab. Darren came over to say goodbye as well. "Well, I don't even know what to say in such cases," he began, stammering. "I hope you won't disappear anywhere." "And where could I disappear to?" Abby laughed. "I'll be home for a few days." A pause hung in the air. Neither knew what to say. So unwilling were they to be separated. Suddenly, Darren pulled Abby to him and kissed her. The woman shivered, but it lasted only a fraction of a second. She responded to his kiss, realizing that her heart was about to jump out of her chest. Saying nothing, Darren got into the car. Abby looked after the cab for a long time. She could not believe that everything had happened in reality. She was brought out of her stupor by Kelly's shout from the gate. "Forgotten!" cried the girl, waving the tablet in her hand. "Mike left it at reception." "Leave it," Abby answered her confusedly. "We live close by. I'll pass it on when I get back. Don't worry about it. If you like, call Darren. Arrange it with him." The plane was coming in for a landing. Abby looked through the porthole at the city lights burning below. She was looking forward to her return, for her farewell to Darren had brought out everything she had accumulated during the days of her wonderful vacation. After her friends left, Abby felt restless. She tried to fill her time by swimming more often and dining at her favourite Armenian restaurant, but the days dragged on unbearably. When the day of departure finally arrived, she rushed to the airport hours before her flight, despite Kelly and Stan's pleas to take one last walk around the city instead of waiting in the stuffy departure lounge. At the airport, Abby regretted her haste. Her flight was delayed, leaving her at a loss. When boarding was finally announced, Abby settled into her seat and promptly fell asleep, exhausted from her restless day. She awoke to the pilot's voice over the speakers, announcing their imminent landing. As Abby descended the escalator, she spotted a familiar figure. Darren stood apart from the other greeters. Her heart raced. She hadn't told him when she was arriving. Surprise mingled with a sudden warmth. Approaching her, Darren smiled sheepishly. "I couldn't let you wait for a cab." "But how did you know my flight time?" Abby asked, bewildered. Darren chuckled. "Abby, we're not living in the Middle Ages. I called the hotel. Kelly filled me in. She was worried about Mike's tablet, apparently thinking you might abscond with it." "I see," Abby said, embarrassed. "But it's such a hassle to come to the airport in the middle of the night for a stranger." "Let's not pretend." Darren's tone turned serious. "You're not a stranger to me. I can only hope, but I believe My feelings are mutual."
"Darren, Abby stumbled over her words. Her heart urged her to confess everything, but fear held her back. "I'm afraid."
"Of what?" he wondered. "How can someone as whole and self-sufficient as you fear anything?"
"I'm afraid of feelings," Abby replied, her gaze distant.
"What's there to fear? If you have them. I mean, you do have feelings for me too, right?"
"I do, but—" Abby's confusion was evident.
"Abby, look," Darren began earnestly. "I know your heart has been deeply hurt by betrayal, but I'm ready to do anything and everything to make you happy. From the moment we met, I knew you were the woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. When you told me you were married, I thought it was hopeless. Women like you aren't easily let go. You may try to downplay your worth, but I see you for who you truly are. Your husband is a fool to lose you. If I were him, I wouldn't give you the slightest reason to doubt my love."
"Darren, are you serious?" Abby couldn't believe her ears. It seemed incredible that he would profess love after knowing her for only a couple of weeks. "Is it possible to realize you're in love so quickly?"
"Darling, believe me, true love can happen in even less time. I've been in love before. I know what it is. I'm a one-woman man by nature. Claire was once my whole world, but fate took her away. Living in the ruins of the past is torment. For years, I tried to find something good in life, and then I met you. I don't know if it's karma, chemistry, mysticism, or obsession. I don't connect with people easily. If you don't believe me, ask Helen. She knows me like the back of her hand. She was a close friend of my late mother's, practically raised me. I don't open up to just anyone. I've been hurt too many times. What I'm telling you now might be difficult to believe, but know this. I love you."
Abby stood stunned. She hadn't heard those words in years, and never thought she would again. She'd been so fixated on her perceived irrelevance as a woman that it was difficult to believe in the sincerity of this man's simple phrase. But Darren's manner of speaking convinced her he wasn't lying.
"I'm not asking you to reciprocate," Darren said sadly. "It's presumptuous of me to expect returned feelings."
"No," Abby blurted out. "You're wrong. It's not presumptuous. I like you very much. Even back at the store, I caught myself thinking about you. As a married woman, I should have nipped such thoughts in the bud. But this whole situation, I feel like I only discovered Carl's affair so I could get closer to you. Before I left, I was upset that I didn't see you. I never expected to find you where I'd hoped to be alone with my thoughts. You asked if I believe in fate. Yes, I do. This can't be coincidence. It's just hard for me to accept that I can be happy. It's been years since I felt joy in my heart. You've turned everything upside down, and I tremble at the mere sight of you. But my mind says that there must be a catch."
"Abby, there's no catch. Here I am laying it all out, and here are you. You can either reject me or accept me. There's no middle ground. The choice is entirely yours."
"Darren, tell me, do I have time to process what I've heard? I desperately want to say yes, but I'm afraid it might be a hasty decision."
"Sweetheart," he replied affectionately, putting his arm around her shoulders. "You have all the time you need. I won't rush you. This is a decision you must make entirely on your own."
Darren drew Abby close and kissed her tenderly on the forehead. Abby melted, feeling an overwhelming sense of being needed, wanted and loved. After some more embracing, the couple went to the parking lot. Darren quickly drove Abby home, extracting a promise from her to call him the next day.
In the morning, while getting ready for the office, Abby realised she couldn't find the folder with the documents. It was most likely at her old apartment. She called Kimberly to warn her that she'd be late, then headed to the place where her family life had crumbled. Carl wasn't supposed to be at home at this time. As she rode the elevator, Abby approached the familiar door, suppressing memories and emotions. The key wouldn't turn. Strange, Abby thought. It's locked from the inside. I guess I'll have to endure Carl's presence. Well, I'll dash in, grab the file, and be gone quickly. With these thoughts, she pressed the doorbell. No one answered for a long time. Abby kept ringing until she heard the latch turn. Carl appeared on the threshold, looking as if he'd just woken up after a night of heavy drinking. Abby shuddered with disgust. "Hi," she said dryly. "I need to pick up something. I'll leave right away. I won't disturb your peace." "Well, come in," Carl grumbled reluctantly. He was clearly unhappy about his wife's sudden appearance. "Where have you been all this time? I called you, but you didn't answer. At work, they said you'd left. I didn't know where you'd gone." "Why did you call me?" Abby inquired, taking off her shoes. "It doesn't matter any more," Carl snapped. Abby headed towards their bedroom, but Carl blocked her way. "Hold on. I'll bring it to you myself. What do you need?" "I can get it myself," Abby replied sharply, trying to sidestep her husband. "This is still my house for now." "Abby," Carl said uncertainly. "What? I see you don't want me to go any further. You're not alone, are you?" Seeing Carl's face change at her question, Abby knew she was right. She yanked the bedroom door open and wasn't particularly surprised to see Wendy sleeping peacefully in bed. "Oh," Abby said loudly, trying to wake the girl. "What a pleasant surprise." Wendy struggled to open her eyes, but as soon as her gaze focused, she bolted upright. "No need to worry, sweetheart," Abby remarked wryly. "Make yourself at home, though I see you don't really need my permission." With determined steps, she made her way to the desk at the back of the room and began noisily pulling out drawers. Finding the right folder, Abby turned around. Wendy was still lying there, seemingly ready to burrow under the blanket to avoid the scene. Looking at the girl in such a pathetic position, Abby noticed a ring on her hand clutching the blanket. This wasn't just any ring. It was a family heirloom, inherited by Abby from her grandmother. She couldn't tolerate such insolence. "Get up!" she ordered. "What?" Wendy mumbled, eyes wide. "You heard me," Abby answered rudely. "Not only have you seduced my husband, which I might have forgiven to you, but now you're shacking up with him in my bed in my house wearing my ring. Get out of here. As I recall, you have your own apartment." The girl was clearly suffering from a hangover, wincing at Abby's loud voice. "Do you want me to repeat myself?" Abby was losing patience. "Or am I speaking in a language you don't understand?" "Abby, stop it!" Carl tried to intercede for his mistress. "Stop it!" Abby roared in his face. Carl took a step back, having never seen his usually mild-mannered wife in such a rage. "And you! How dare you bring that trash here to still my home? Why the hell did you swear you'd break up with her? I don't care what your excuses are, but I won't tolerate this kind of insolence." She strode determinedly toward Wendy. The girl shrieked in surprise. "Take off that ring right now. If you don't, I won't dirty my hands on you, don't worry. I'll just call the police and file a report. Believe me, they won't go easy on you for theft." Wendy shuddered. There was no trace of her former arrogance and confidence left. She tried to pull the ring off her finger, but it was stuck. No matter how hard she tried, it wouldn't budge. The finger only swelled more. Looking at these clumsy attempts, Abby laughed, long and hysterically. "You know what?" Abby suddenly stopped laughing. "To hell with you. I don't have time to waste on you. I've got better things to do." With these words, Abby left the bedroom, shoving Carl aside. As she put on her shoes, her husband followed her into the hallway. "What have you arranged?" He tried to sound confident, but his appearance betrayed him. "I arranged. Make sure that girl takes off my ring. Otherwise, I'll do exactly what I said. I'm not kidding. I'll see you in court. And given the circumstances, don't even hope I'll give up the apartment. We'll divide everything according to the law. Keep that in mind." Abby slammed the door. As she waited for the elevator, Abby pondered. It seemed to her that she had overdone it, but she quickly reassured herself that she had done the right thing. Her once passionately loved husband had turned out to be a pathetic man who didn't mind his words, and this Wendy now seemed the most suitable match for him. Gradually, her emotional state settled. Abby arrived at the office completely calm, as if nothing had happened. She immediately plunged headlong into work, which she had missed. Only in the evening did she remember that she hadn't called Darren. Rushing to make up for her mistake, she dialed the number. The phone was switched off. Strange, thought Abby. He must be busy. I'll probably call back later. But Darren didn't answer on the second or third attempt either. Abby tried calling until night, but all her attempts failed. She didn't even notice how she fell asleep. Waking up in the morning, Abby dialed the number again. "What on earth is this?" she said aloud. "It can't be that he just picked up the phone and turned it off." A bad feeling of foreboding crept into her soul. Realizing that she wouldn't calm down without finding out what happened, Abby decided to call Mike. The boy answered almost immediately. "Mike, hello, it's Abby. I'm calling your daddy, and he doesn't answer. Are you all right?" "Abby," the boy said with a trembling voice, "Daddy had an accident yesterday. He's in intensive care. I wanted to call you, but I don't have your number. And Dad's cell phone is missing somewhere. Abby, please come. I'm petrified." "Just don't cry." Abby hurried to calm the child, though she herself was paralyzed with fear. "I'll come right away. Tell me the address." Abby rushed out of the apartment, hastily dressing. The last thing she cared about now was how she looked, or where she was late for. Having reached her destination, she rushed to find the right apartment. Mike opened the door. It was obvious from the boy's face that he had been crying. Abby hugged the child tightly. "I'm so glad you came," he sobbed. "I'm all alone now. Helen has gone to the hospital. She asked me to stay home." "It's all right, dear." The woman stroked his head. "Let's go to the hospital together. How did this even happen?" "Dad was driving home. A car hit him from the side. The police called me. Then Helen came. I'm very afraid, Abby. What if he dies?" Suddenly, the boy began to choke. Abby remembered how Darren had mentioned that strong emotions could trigger a choking attack in Mike. Panic gripped her. "Mike, honey, just breathe deeply. Where's your inhaler?" The boy fumbled in his pockets, finally pulling out a small canister. Taking a few breaths through it, Mike began to breathe more evenly, and after a couple of minutes, the attack completely passed. "Abby," he whispered, "don't be afraid for me. I'm used to it. When Mum died, I thought I couldn't bear it, and now Daddy's hurt." "Okay," Abby said firmly. "Stop thinking bad. We have good doctors. Dad's going to be fine, and we don't need him to see how worried you are. He loves you very much. Let's get ready. Let's go to the hospital." They reached the clinic rapidly. The roads were almost empty. As soon as they entered the lobby, Abby saw Helen. The woman's eyes were swollen with tears. "My dears," she rushed towards Abby and Mike. "How are you here? I didn't sleep all night waiting for the doctor. Darren is having another operation. He has lost a lot of blood, and his blood type is rare. They're looking for it all over the city, but there's almost nothing. I'll be happy to give mine, but I'm not a match. And Mike's blood type is different. We've already called everyone we know, but to no avail. "What blood type?" Abby asked, with hope in her voice. "O negative." Abby felt her arms and legs go limp. She slowly lowered herself onto the chair and looked into Helen's eyes. "Call the doctor," she said quietly. "I'm O negative. Let's not delay." Helen grew anxious and rushed towards the reception desk, vigorously explaining something to the nurse. The nurse rang a bell, and just a minute later, a doctor quickly entered the lobby. Seeing Helen, who was already familiar to him, he headed towards her. "I've just been informed that a donor has been found," he asked. "Yes," Helen nodded. "Abby, come here, please." "Hello," Abby greeted the doctor. "I have the right blood type. I'm not sick, and I'm ready to give as much as needed." "Are you a relative?" The doctor raised an eyebrow. "Yes," Abby replied without question. She herself didn't understand how it happened, but now she felt that her closest person to her was balancing on the edge of life and death, so any delay could be fatal. "Okay," the doctor nodded. "Let's go to the procedure room and get everything ready. Don't worry. Darren has heavy blood loss, but with a timely transfusion, he can be saved. It's a miracle you showed up." Abby hadn't slept for 24 hours since the transfusion. Hours had passed, and Darren was still in intensive care. The doctor told them all to go home, promising to notify them as soon as the patient's condition improved. But Abby flatly refused to leave. She sent Mike and Helen home by cab, strictly instructing them not to leave each other until she called. They were all on edge now. Abby sat on the comfortable leather sofa, occasionally drifting off. Every time a door opened or footsteps sounded nearby, she would startle awake, drink a bitter cup of coffee, and then doze off again. She dreamed of something terrible. Tentacles trying to drag Darren away, tearing him away from her arms as she stood powerless to hold him back. The man desperately clung to her, screaming, "Abby! Abby!" "Abby!" The doctor gently shook her shoulder. "Abby, wake up!" Abby opened her eyes, disoriented. She squinted, scrutinizing the figure in the white coat. "Abby," the doctor repeated, "we've moved Darren to a regular ward. It's all over. You can visit him, but only briefly." Abby jumped up, suddenly alert. She clutched at the doctor's sleeve, afraid he might vanish. Together they walked to Darren's room. Abby knocked softly and opened the door. The room was dark, illuminated only by a small lamp and the equipment lights at the bed's headboard. Darren lay with his eyes closed, his state unclear. Abby hesitated before entering. Finally, she stepped in and sat by the bed, taking Darren's hand. He opened his eyes and, seeing her, attempted a smile. His head was partially bandaged. His nose appeared broken, and his left arm was in a cast. "Darren," Abby smiled. "It's me." "I'm so glad." Darren's voice rumbled faintly, his parched lips moving with difficulty. Abby took a bottle of water from the bedside table and carefully helped him drink. "You can't imagine how relieved I am." Darren only blinked in response as if agreeing. "I don't know what I would have done if you were gone. We all were so scared. But now everything will be fine." "The doctor said..." Darren struggled with each word. "I was in a car accident. I wouldn't have survived if they hadn't found my rare blood type." "I know, honey," Abby whispered. "It's all turned out okay. Now we just need you to make a speedy recovery." "I can do that." Darren tried to smile again. "The main thing is that you're here for me." A nurse knocked, announcing the end of visiting time. Abby leaned over and kissed Darren softly on the lips. She promised to return as soon as allowed and to bring Mike. Darren recovered quickly. In 2 weeks he was discharged, though his arm remained in a cast. Abby now rushed from work to be with her beloved, whose recovery depended on her support. She readily helped with household chores, despite the presence of a housekeeper. Helen temporarily managed the store. Sometimes Darren thought she ran the business even better than he did. For Abby, being near Darren was pure happiness. Only the approaching divorce clouded her thoughts. When she told her son about Carl and Wendy's affair, Lucas was furious. "Mum, call me heartless, but I won't support that freeloader. I'm removing Dad from running the entire firm, leaving him with only the new branch." "That's cruel, Lucas," Abby said, embarrassed. She didn't want to punish Carl so harshly. The firm was their shared creation, but she partly agreed with her son. The thought of Wendy controlling their property like a mistress disgusted her. "Wasn't Dad cruel to you? Besides, he suggested putting the company in my name. No one forced him. Now I see it was probably the wisest decision of his life. Otherwise, that woman would have taken half your company without blinking. I'm not leaving her with nothing. The new branch will be profitable enough to support his little viper." "Do as you see fit, son," Abby sighed tiredly. "For me, that man no longer exists. I don't even want to think about him." "That's fine. He'll stay at his branch and won't bother you at work. I'll call him myself and explain everything. I'm sure we'll reach an understanding." For some reason, the conversation with her son left a bitter taste in Abby's mouth. She felt Carl would curse her, but she didn't feel guilty. It didn't concern her anymore. All that remained was to sign the divorce papers. Abby drove to the courthouse composed. She wouldn't give Carl reason to doubt her happiness without him. As she approached the office, she saw her husband sitting on a bench. "I see you're unaccompanied today," Abby remarked wryly. Carl shot her a baleful glance. "What's it to you? You got what you wanted. Why ask me any more questions?" "What do you mean?" Abby wondered. "I think you're the one who got what you wanted. Didn't you start this charade?" "Lucas called me." "Oh, that's it. What do I have to do with this? Do you really think I encouraged my son to remove you from the company's management? He's an adult, capable of making informed decisions. You betrayed your family. Don't expect generosity and humble acceptance in return. But honestly, I don't give a damn. Though I will thank him that I don't have to see you often." "I've broken up with Wendy," Carl muttered under his breath. "That's sad," Abby said indifferently, looking away. "That's all right, you'll find someone else. You're still quite young, well-to-do. I don't see why you should suffer." "Abby," Carl stood up and tried to approach her, but the woman deftly pulled away. "Let's stop all this. It's not too late to tell the court that we've reconciled. I need you. I only realised after you left what a fool I was to get involved with that gold digger." "I figured it out." Abby laughed. "She's the one who dumped you when she realised you didn't have the fortune she was counting on. You don't need to try to win me back. I'm happy with the man I love, and you can live your life as you please." "You've got a man? Isn't that too fast?" "Not just any man, mind you, but one who loves me and accepts me for who I am, and I love him just as much. So that's it, Carl. It's over between us." At that moment, the secretary came out of the courtroom and invited the couple to the meeting. Having received the coveted status of divorced, the woman flew out of the courthouse as if on wings, without even looking at Carl in farewell. All she wanted was to be in Darren's arms as soon as possible. Her favourite man was waiting for her in a cosy coffee shop. When Abby came closer, she noticed that he seemed displeased about something. "Here I am, dear," she greeted cheerfully. "Abby," replied Darren somewhat ingratiatingly, his arm now free of the cast. "I've just come from the hospital, as you can see." "Congratulations, you're back in action at last." "Wait," the man interrupted her delight. "Something has come to my attention, and I'd like you to clear the air. My doctor has only now provided the name of the person who donated blood for me." Abby blushed deeply. With all the fuss, She hadn't thought to tell Darren about her good deed. And was it so important? As if reading her thoughts, Darren looked intently into her eyes. Do you even realize that now I owe you my life, both literally and figuratively? He endured a long pause, during which a whole spectrum of emotions shifted inside Abby. She couldn't understand why Darren seemed so displeased. Suddenly, the man burst out laughing. Abby, I'll carry you in my arms for the rest of my life. Out of 1,000,000 women, I had to meet the one with that unfortunate rare blood type. If it weren't for you, I'd be dead already. Abby smiled, tears streaming down her cheeks. It was now that she realized that in this wonderful man she had found true happiness. Why don't you say something? Darling, say something. We are of the same blood, you and I. Abby quoted the famous phrase from Mowgli, which in her mind demonstrated the strongest bond between living beings.